Here, just sign the damn thing already. Then I can finally be free. Grayson shoved the thick stack of divorce papers across the polished mahogany dining room table, his voice thick with a grating, unfiltered irritation that tore through the quiet of the house. Beside him, his mistress, Chloe, stood with an incredibly triumphant, sickeningly sweet smile plastered across her meticulously contoured face. Her swollen belly protruded prominently beneath her designer maternity dress, a physical, undeniable testament to their months-long affair, positioned almost as a weapon as she looked down her nose at me. The cloying, overwhelmingly heavy scent of her expensive floral perfume filled the room, choking the very air I had breathed and maintained for 15 years. "You're absolutely sure about this?" I asked quietly, keeping my gaze locked on the scattered papers. My heart wasn't breaking. It was already a frozen block of solid ice. I felt absolutely nothing for the man standing in front of me, a man I had once pledged my entire life and future to. "Of course, I'm sure," Grayson scoffed, rolling his eyes as if my question was the most absurd, irritating thing he had ever heard. "I'm going to be truly happy with Chloe and our new baby. Did you honestly think I could stand being shackled to a dull, boring, incompetent woman like you forever?" Seated comfortably at the head of the table, Grayson's mother, Eleanor, nodded emphatically, her sharp, hawkish features twisted into a sneer of pure vindication. "That's exactly right," Eleanor spat, crossing her arms over her expensive cashmere cardigan. "My Grayson deserves a younger, much more beautiful, vibrant wife. A useless, unskilled woman like you, who couldn't even manage to give me a proper grandson, should just pack up and get out. Don't you dare ever show your face in this family again." Eleanor's gaze was frigid, stripped of any basic human empathy, looking at me as if my 15 years of tireless, silent devotion had never existed in the first place. I looked down at the divorce papers. Grayson's rushed, aggressive signature and Chloe's loopy, overly stylized handwriting were already inked on the dotted lines, right alongside Eleanor's signature as the official witness. They had orchestrated this entire ambush perfectly. All that was left to complete their miserable little theater production was my own name. "All right," I said. My voice was incredibly steady, completely devoid of the hysterical tears they were so clearly hoping to see. I picked up the heavy brass pen. Without a single moment's hesitation, without a tremor in my fingers, I signed my name. I pushed the papers back across the table. Then I gently squeezed the small, trembling hand of my 7-year-old daughter, Lily, who was anxiously clutching the fabric of my sleeve, sensing the toxic, suffocating hostility in the room. "Good. It's done," Grayson crowed, snatching the papers from the table with a loud, victorious laugh. He looked at Chloe, kissing her cheek in a display of sickening triumph. "Now, pack your things and get out of my house." "My bags are already packed," I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt. "Come on, Lily." I took my daughter's hand and walked toward the front hallway, retrieving our coats. I opened the heavy oak front door and stepped out into the damp evening air without casting a single glance backward. But at that exact moment, as the heavy door clicked shut behind me, the three of them had absolutely no idea. They didn't know that just hours after signing those papers, I would be taking Lily on a first-class flight far away from America, directly to London. And they certainly didn't know that the shiny, perfect new life they were so eagerly anticipating would be the exact trigger that would send their own arrogant lives violently spiraling into an inescapable abyss. Raindrops streaked across the taxi window like transparent tears, violently blurring the neon city lights as we sped down the highway. Lily, utterly exhausted by the emotional whiplash of the evening, was fast asleep, her small head resting warmly on my lap. As the taxi headed toward the international airport, I stared out at the passing traffic and allowed myself to reflect on the sheer absurdity of my life. It had been 15 years since I married Grayson Miller. I had literally dedicated every ounce of my energy to being his primary support system. Back then, Grayson was a seemingly diligent ambitious employee at a mid-tier international trading corporation. "When we get married, I want you to stay home and support me," he had told me, holding my hands with a look of intense sincerity. "I need a traditional home. I need a wife who takes care of the foundation so I can conquer the world." So, blindly in love and eager to please, I officially gave up my career and chose the path of a devoted stay-at-home mother. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, had immediately sneered at my decision, twisting it to feed her own superiority complex. "Well, I suppose a woman with no real marketable skills like you is only good for domestic housework anyway," she had told me on my wedding day, her voice dripping with condescension. "You'll be living entirely off my son's hard-earned money, so you'd better serve him flawlessly." Every single day since that wedding had been a grueling exercise in silent patience. Grayson was infinitely charming and charismatic to outsiders, but behind closed doors, he was a complete tyrant. "Is dinner ready yet?" "The shower's not hot enough." "You didn't iron this collar right." "Do I have to do everything myself?" He would yell at the slightest, most microscopic inconvenience. Still, I tried to swallow the mistreatment and find hope in the birth of our daughter. "I have to be strong for this child," I would tell myself repeatedly in the bathroom mirror, enduring his unreasonable, escalating demands and Eleanor's relentless, daily nagging. But everything fundamentally changed about 6 months ago. Grayson started coming home incredibly late. His weekends suddenly became filled with urgent golf trips and emergency client summits. The lingering scent of a different floral perfume on his jacket, the faint, undeniable smudge of pink lipstick on his collar, the way he would aggressively angle his phone screen away from me. They were all the classic, pathetic signs of an affair. Then, one night, the final, shattering blow was delivered. His smartphone buzzed loudly on the nightstand while he was in the shower. The screen illuminated the dark room, and I saw a text notification from a contact named Chloe, complete with a red heart emoji. "Miss you tonight. The baby wants to see his daddy, too." The moment I read that message, I felt the ground literally crumble beneath my feet. Not only was Grayson cheating on me, but this other woman was pregnant. With trembling hands and a racing heart, I had confronted him the moment he stepped out of the bathroom. I expected denial. I expected panic. Instead, he showed absolutely zero remorse. He just laughed. "Ah, so you found out? Well, this is a pretty good time to tell you anyway. I'm marrying Chloe, so we're getting a divorce." He said it with a casual, arrogant smirk, as if he were discussing ordering takeout for dinner. "What are you talking about?" I had whispered, paralyzed by shock. "We're a married couple. We have Lily." "So what?" he had snapped, tying his robe. "Chloe is pregnant with my actual child. A son. There's no point in being saddled with someone like you anymore. A woman I don't even see as attractive. You're just dead weight." His cruel words had completely, brutally negated my 15 years of loyal devotion. But even more devastating was Eleanor's reaction the next day when I foolishly begged for her help to save the marriage. She had given me a cold, reptilian smile and sipped her tea. "Oh, Grayson is getting a new wife? How wonderful. A young, cute, vibrant bride is infinitely better than an incompetent, boring one like you. And it might be a boy this time. I absolutely cannot wait to see my grandson." Eleanor had always been fiercely, vocally disappointed that I had given birth to a girl. For her, the mistress's sudden pregnancy was the perfect, golden excuse to permanently cast me aside. From that day on, life inside that house became a psychological hell for me and Lily. Grayson maliciously cut off my access to the household checking accounts, limiting my grocery money, and began shamelessly bringing Chloe into our home while I was still packing. Every time I saw him lovingly, tenderly caress Chloe's stomach right in front of Lily, my heart shattered into a million jagged pieces. "Mommy, don't cry." Lily's small, warm hand would reach up to wipe away my tears. That was the moment I made my ultimate decision. If I stayed and fought a traditional, messy divorce battle in their territory, Lily would be emotionally destroyed. I had to escape this toxic wasteland and start a brand new life entirely on my own terms. I began my deep, structural preparations in absolute secret, ensuring Grayson and his wicked family would never find out what I was truly capable of. The taxi slowly pulled up to the airport's massive international departure gate. The heavy rain had finally stopped, and a few faint stars were visible in the dark sky above the tarmac. "We're here, Lily. Let's go," I whispered, gently waking her. Pulling our single, large suitcase, we headed for the glowing automated doors. A new life was about to begin for us, and a brand new, inescapable hell was about to begin for them. I glanced back one last time at the distant, glittering city lights. I would never return to this miserable place. Just then, my smartphone violently vibrated in my coat pocket. An unknown number was calling. Who could it possibly be at this hour? With a deep sense of foreboding, I answered the call. "Hello." The voice on the other end was unexpected. It was the strained, hesitant voice of my father-in-law. "Era, I am so sorry." Arthur's voice was tight with stress. It had been months since I'd last heard him speak a full sentence to me. Unlike his venomous wife, Eleanor, Arthur was a quiet, cowardly man who rarely interfered in family matters. But when Grayson had arrogantly demanded a divorce and plotted to kick me out, Arthur had merely stood by the fireplace and watched my destruction in absolute silence. "Arthur, what is it?" "It's incredibly late," I said, shielding the phone from the airport noise. "Grayson told me you actually left. He said you signed the papers and walked out into the rain." There was a distinct, condescending tone of blame in his voice, as if I was the one disrupting the peace. "Yes, Grayson made it very clear he is going to marry Chloe. And she's pregnant, isn't she?" A heavy, exhausted sigh came from the other end of the line. "Yes, about that." "Era, are you really, genuinely sure this little stunt is for the best?" "What do you mean, for the best?" I asked, my voice hardening. "I mean, what about Lily? Do you honestly think you can raise her on your own? Grayson is refusing to pay a single cent of alimony or child support. He's furious with you." I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. Grayson assumed I was a helpless stay-at-home mom with zero savings, and he was actively trying to crush me financially to punish me for not begging on my knees. "I'll be fine, Arthur. I have my own plans, and I will raise Lily to be a wonderful, independent person." He saw right through what he assumed was my pathetic bravado. "Era, don't be so ridiculously stubborn. What can you possibly do? You have no resume. If you just swallow your pride, go back to the house, cry, and beg Grayson for forgiveness, maybe he'll break up with Chloe. For the child's sake, don't you think that's the wise, mature thing to do?" "Arthur, I have absolutely no intention of begging Grayson for anything." He was stroking Chloe's stomach right in front of Lily's eyes. "I don't want a man like that to be my daughter's father." "Don't be so blindly proud," Arthur suddenly shouted, a very rare show of emotion from the taciturn, cowardly man. "A woman with no skills like you can't possibly raise a child alone in this economy. Even Eleanor said you have no charm left. That's why Grayson is leaving you for a younger woman. Now listen to me. You come back home by tomorrow morning. I'll talk to Grayson. We'll pay off Chloe quietly from my retirement fund and send her away. You just need to shut up, be a good, quiet girl, and remain Grayson's wife to protect our family's public image." His words were intended to sound like a generous lifeline to a drowning woman, but they were only meant to protect Grayson's corporate reputation and the family's pristine public image from the scandal of a messy divorce. "Arthur, it's far too late. I've already made my decision." "Decision? What decision?" he sputtered. "I will never have anything to do with Grayson again, and this is goodbye to you and your toxic family as well." I said nothing more and ended the call, my hand trembling as I clutched the phone. "Mommy, who is that?" Lily, who had fully woken up, looked up at me with a deeply worried expression. her big eyes reflecting the harsh airport lights. It was nothing, sweetie. Just a wrong number. We'll be on the plane soon. A plane? Where are we going? To a very far-away place, I said, stroking her soft hair with a reassuring smile. A beautiful, happy place just for you and me. Internally, I was filled with a swirling mix of anxiety and adrenaline, but there was absolutely no turning back now. Lily, I'm so sorry we had to leave Daddy, I whispered, a brief, fleeting moment of maternal weakness escaping me as we walked toward the security checkpoint. But Lily just looked up at me and shook her little head firmly. I don't need Daddy. What? I stopped walking. Daddy was always mad at Mommy, and Grandma was always so mean to you. I don't want to see you cry in the kitchen anymore, Mommy. Her innocent, piercing words were an absolute revelation. This tiny, beautiful child had been far more deeply aware of the toxic, suffocating atmosphere in our home than I had ever imagined. Oh, Lily. I dropped to my knees and hugged her tightly, burying my face in her shoulder. I would do anything to protect this child. I would face any hardship. I would burn the world down to keep her safe. Boarding for the flight to London will now commence. The automated announcement echoed clearly through the vast, vaulted ceilings of the airport. Come on, Lily. Let's go. I stood up and held her hand firmly. My steps toward the boarding gate were infinitely stronger and more resolute than before. As I led Lily toward the duty-free shops near our gate to grab a quick snack before the long flight, Arthur's condescending words still stung my pride like venom. A woman with no skills, like you can't possibly raise a child alone. The phrase echoed loudly in my ears. I became a housewife solely because Grayson had manipulated me into it, claiming he needed a traditional foundation. But now that it was convenient for him to discard me, I was looked down upon as an unskilled, dependent parasite. I was just a convenient, unpaid housekeeper, a decorative tool to maintain their public image of success. Mommy. Lily's voice broke through my dark thoughts, her little face etched with worry. Oh, sorry, sweetie. Are you hungry? I asked, forcing a bright, cheerful tone. She nodded eagerly. Then, let's go get something special from that shop over there. What would you like? We walked into a brightly lit convenience store, and Lily's face instantly lit up as she looked at the rows of imported snacks. Watching her innocent, unburdened joy brought a small, necessary measure of peace to my chaotic heart. I had to be an absolute rock for her. This one. Lily pointed to a cute, pink box of European chocolates. Okay, let's go pay for it. As I reached into my purse for my wallet, a sharp, nasal voice called out from directly behind me. Well, if it isn't little Lily. I turned around, my blood running cold, to see a painfully familiar face. It was Grayson's younger sister, my sister-in-law, Belle. She was dressed head to toe in flashy designer clothing, an oversized cashmere coat draped over her shoulders, pulling a ridiculously expensive luxury suitcase. She always treated me with the exact same suffocating, condescending attitude as Grayson and Eleanor. Belle, what are you doing here? I asked, genuinely surprised by the horrific coincidence. Belle laughed dismissively, checking her manicured nails. A luxury trip to Hawaii with my girlfriends, of course. First class. What a bizarre coincidence, though. Where are you two going at this time of night? And with such a massive suitcase, she added, her eagle eyes landing on our luggage. Just a little far away, I replied vaguely, stepping slightly in front of Lily to shield her. Far away, you say? Belle looked from me to Lily with a highly amused, predatory expression. Oh, wait, that's right. My brother just texted the family group chat. He told us you signed the divorce papers and actually ran off into the rain. Mom was furious, by the way. She said you were a completely inconsiderate, dramatic wife for leaving without begging for a proper discussion. She spoke loudly, entirely oblivious to the people around us. The store clerk and several other travelers were actively glancing our way. I felt my face burn with a sudden flash of shame, but I forced myself to remain completely composed. Inconsiderate? I didn't just leave, Belle. Grayson explicitly told me he was divorcing me to marry Chloe. Well, if you want to put it that way, it just means my successful brother chose Chloe over you. You really can't blame him, Era. He's a high-value man. Of course, he'd prefer someone young, vibrant, and pretty over a tired housewife. Besides, Chloe is pregnant. Mom is so incredibly thrilled we'll finally have a proper male heir to carry on the family name. Belle's cruel words were an exact, chilling echo of her mother's. To them, Chloe's pregnancy was a literal free pass, a legitimate, celebrated reason to throw me in the garbage. Poor Lily! Belle sighed mockingly, looking down at my daughter with fake, venomous pity. To be abandoned by your own father because your mother is so utterly inadequate. Belle, don't you dare say things like that in front of my daughter, I snapped, my voice finally rising with a dangerous edge. I didn't care if she insulted me, but I would absolutely not let her psychological poison touch my child. What? It's the objective truth, Belle sneered, adjusting her designer handbag. A stay-at-home mom with literally zero marketable skills trying to raise a child alone in this economy? It's mathematically impossible. You'll be dead broke in a month, Era. You'll come crawling back to my brother's doorstep, begging on your knees for grocery money. She let out a loud, mocking laugh that grated against my eardrums. Good luck with that little delusion. We'll be perfectly happy celebrating with Chloe and the new baby. See you around, loser. With a dramatic flick of her hair, Belle sauntered out of the store. My hands trembled with violent, unexpressed rage as I watched her disappear into the crowd. Mommy! Lily squeezed my hand tightly. Her small warmth was the only thing that kept the ice in my heart from freezing me completely solid. It's okay, sweetie. We're going to be incredibly happy. Just the two of us, I promised, offering her a brave smile as I paid for the chocolates. The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal again. It was finally time to leave. As we walked to the gate, Belle's words replayed on an endless loop in my mind. You'll be broke in a month and come crying back to my brother. That family was so absolutely certain that I was a helpless, powerless, destitute woman. And on the surface, it was entirely true. In their arrogant eyes, I was just a domestic appliance that had outlived its usefulness. But they were making a massive, catastrophic mistake. They didn't know that for the past 15 years, I hadn't just been quietly folding laundry and baking casseroles. I touched the heavily encrypted smartphone in my coat pocket. It held the ultimate trump card I had meticulously prepared for this exact day. Grayson, Eleanor, Belle, and Chloe, they all believed they were the ultimate winners of this divorce. But the blissful, wealthy future they envisioned wouldn't last the month. As I climbed the steps to the plane, I looked up at the dark sky. On this day of my permanent departure from America, my heart was filled not with grief, but with a quiet, terrifying, burning resolve. I absolutely could not wait to see how their arrogant faces would twist in utter agony on the day they learned the true reality of their situation. But then a darker, more complex thought crossed my analytical mind. If Chloe's sudden, convenient pregnancy was what I deeply suspected it was, things might unfold in a way that was far more devastating than I could have ever orchestrated myself. The plane door closed, and the moment of takeoff was near. I fastened my seatbelt and stared out the window. As the plane began to move, my heart accelerated toward a new future. But whether that future held light or darkness, no one yet knew. After a grueling flight of over 12 hours, we finally landed at London's Heathrow Airport. The local time was early evening. A thick, dreary canopy of gray clouds covered the English sky, and a cold, biting, misty rain, so typical of London in the autumn, was falling relentlessly against the terminal windows. "Mommy, I'm so cold," Lily whispered, exhausted from the marathon journey, tugging weakly at the hem of my trench coat. "I know, sweetie. We'll be at a nice, warm hotel very soon. I promised, hugging her close and hurrying us toward the official taxi rank. Contrary to the fierce anticipation I had felt on the plane for my new life, the oppressive, gray cityscape blurring outside the taxi window seemed to amplify a deep, lingering anxiety in my chest. We finally arrived at the upscale boutique hotel I had booked in central London. The lobby was warm, smelling of cedar and expensive tea. As I stood at the marble front desk to formally check in, the elderly concierge behind the counter swiped my card, frowned, and looked at me with a deeply troubled expression. "I am incredibly sorry, madam, but this credit card has been declined by your bank." "What? That can't be right," I said, my heart skipping a beat. "Could you please try running it again? It's a premium card." "I've tried it 3 times, madam. It appears to be completely locked by the issuer. Do you perhaps have another card?" I frantically pulled out my secondary visa from my wallet, but the machine beeped with the exact same harsh rejection. Panic beginning to rise in my throat, I rushed over to an ATM in the corner of the lobby and tried to withdraw cash using the joint debit card I had brought from the US, but that was also aggressively rejected. I physically felt the blood drain entirely from my face. I quickly pulled out my phone and connected to the hotel's free Wi-Fi network. Instantly, a massive flood of dozens of notifications from my messaging apps exploded onto my screen. They were all from my ex-husband, Grayson, and my ex-mother-in-law, Eleanor. A text from Grayson read, "Hey, Belle just texted the family group chat. She told me you took Lily and actually fled the country to the UK. You absolute foolish woman. Did you really think you could just take a European vacation on my dime? I've called the bank and had all the family credit cards in your name permanently canceled. I also transferred every single cent from our joint savings account into my personal, private account. Did you really think a useless housewife could run away overseas on MY hard-earned money? You're going to be stranded and begging on the streets by morning. This will teach a clueless, arrogant woman like you a severe lesson." Next was an audio voicemail from Eleanor. When I pressed play, her shrill, venomous voice echoed quietly in the corner of the lobby. "What an utterly shameless, thieving wife you are, Era. Trying to run off to Europe with the money my son broke his back to earn. You're no better than a common street thief. I hope you starve to death, miserably in some foreign land. And don't you dare call crying to my son for a plane ticket home when you're completely broke." I stared at the glowing screen, completely speechless, my breathing turning shallow. While I was 30,000 feet in the air, completely unreachable, they had maliciously severed every single one of my immediate financial lifelines. Even the small, personal emergency fund I had kept in my own name at that specific American bank had been locked out. Grayson must have somehow answered the security questions and changed the password to financially paralyze me. "Madam, I am very sorry, but if you cannot provide a valid deposit method, we simply cannot give you a room tonight." The clerk's professional, detached voice mercifully brought me back to reality. Within minutes, we were politely but firmly forced out of the comfortable, warm lobby and back out onto the freezing, rain-slicked streets of London, stranded in a foreign country, thousands of miles from anything familiar with no one to immediately turn to. All I had was a meager $300 in emergency cash in my purse. My hand, white-knuckling the handle of my heavy suitcase, trembled violently. A profound chill of genuine fear crept up from my wet shoes, making my teeth chatter. "Mommy, I'm so hungry, and my hands are freezing," Lily whimpered, looking up at me with large tears welling in her eyes. Her little face was ghostly pale, and her small shoulders were shivering uncontrollably in the damp wind. A woman with no skills, like "you can't possibly raise a child alone." Arthur's scolding, prophetic voice and Belle's mocking, arrogant face flashed brilliantly through my panicked mind. Was Grayson right? Was I being hopelessly naive? Had 15 years of being a submissive housewife completely dulled my survival instincts? At this terrifying rate, I wouldn't just be dooming myself to poverty. I would be dragging my innocent daughter down into the gutter with me. An overwhelming, suffocating sense of despair crushed my chest. Standing under the flickering glow of a London street lamp, getting drenched by the rain, I was on the absolute verge of breaking down and sobbing into Lily's hair. No, I bit my lip hard. This is absolutely no time for crying. I still had it, the ultimate trump card hidden in my coat pocket, the offshore accounts, the network. But how could I possibly access them securely in this immediate, desperate situation? I needed encrypted access, not a public Wi-Fi network. Even if I tried to make a secure satellite call to my employer, considering the brutal time difference, there was absolutely no guarantee the right executive in the US would even be awake to answer the phone and wire emergency funds to a local bank. The rain grew exponentially heavier, soaking through my trench coat, and the historic London streets sank into a cold, unforgiving darkness. I could physically feel Lily's body temperature dropping against my leg. This was our absolute limit. I had to ask someone for help. Just then, the brilliant, blinding LED headlights of a massive vehicle cut through the rain. A sleek, elongated, polished black luxury sedan glided to a smooth stop directly in front of us. Its heavy tires splashing through a deep puddle, it wasn't a classic, boxy London black cab. It was a corporate executive vehicle. The heavy rear door opened silently. A tall, imposing figure holding a massive, black golf umbrella stepped out onto the wet pavement. The sharp, confident sound of expensive leather shoes approached us through the pouring rain. "What on earth are you doing out here in a place like this, in this weather?" The freezing, punishing rain that had been beating down relentlessly on my head was suddenly completely blocked. I slowly lifted my wet face, brushing my soaked hair from my eyes. My gaze met with a person I never, ever, in a million years expected to see standing on a street corner in the United Kingdom. "You? What are you doing here?" I gasped, staring at him as if I were hallucinating a ghost. The older gentleman didn't answer immediately. He swiftly took off his incredibly expensive, tailored cashmere overcoat and gently, warmly draped it over my violently shivering daughter. Then he turned back to me with a calm, deeply reassuring smile. "I have come to personally pick you up, madam. Please come inside the car, quickly. Your beautiful daughter is going to catch a terrible cold." Plunged into the absolute, freezing depths of despair on a foreign, unforgiving night, I looked at the man holding the umbrella over my head. Who was this person who had appeared before me? And from here, the massive gears of my epic counterattack against Grayson and his toxic family would finally, ruthlessly begin to turn. "I've come to pick you up. Please come. Your daughter will catch a cold." In the freezing rain, the man who had draped his luxurious cashmere coat over Lily held his umbrella over me and smiled gently. "Mr. Stanley, what are you doing here?" I stared at him as if I were seeing a ghost. Standing there was Richard Stanley, the head of the American branch of a massive, multi-billion-dollar British investment fund, which just happened to be the biggest, most vital client of the trading corporation where Grayson worked. His salt and pepper hair, his impeccably tailored Seville rose suit, and his fiercely intelligent, calm demeanor were exactly as I remembered from the rare, high-level corporate galas we had briefly interacted at in the US. But why was one of the most powerful financial executives in the world here, rescuing me on a dark street in London? I am not entirely surprised you're in shock. "We can explain everything in the car, please," Mr. Stanley said in his crisp, fluent English, opening the warm, illuminated rear door of the sedan for me. Bewildered, holding the shivering Lily tightly against my chest, I stumbled into the incredibly warm, luxurious leather interior of the executive car. Mr. Stanley quickly got in the other side, shaking off his umbrella, and gave his driver a short, sharp instruction. The powerful car pulled away from the curb effortlessly, leaving the freezing rain behind. "Madam Era, I must sincerely apologize for this rather unconventional, chaotic welcome to our city," he began, turning up the climate control to warm Lily. I heard your flight was delayed and I was heading to Heathrow to receive you. But when I checked with your intended hotel regarding your arrival, they informed my team that you had already left. But how did you even know which hotel I was booked at? And why are you here, Mr. Stanley? I asked, my mind still reeling. He smiled a knowing, apologetic smile. I received incredibly strict, top priority instructions from him to ensure your absolute safety the moment you landed on British soil. He was the one who actually arranged the hotel booking on the back end. However, I must confess, I never imagined that foolish ex-husband of yours would go so far as to completely cancel your domestic credit cards mid-flight. I sincerely apologize that our security response was slightly delayed and caused you such terrible distress. I caught my breath. The encrypted smartphone in my coat pocket felt suddenly very heavy. The contact information for a certain, highly elusive billionaire stored securely inside. Your primary employer, Mr. Stanley said, confirming my exact thoughts with a nod, and my longtime, esteemed business partner, Mr. Vance. At the mention of his name, I lowered my eyes, a massive wave of relief finally washing over my exhausted body. Not Grayson, not Eleanor, not Belle. No one in that pathetic, arrogant American family knew my absolute, deepest secret. The true reason I was not just an unskilled, useless housewife. For 15 years, I had not just been living a pathetic life confined to scrubbing floors and folding Grayson's laundry. Before my marriage, I had worked as a highly sought-after prodigy analyst at a prestigious Wall Street financial institution. Fluent in 4 languages, I specialized in predicting overseas market trends, forensic corporate accounting, and high-risk investment analysis. When I married Grayson, I officially resigned from the corporate world to become a housewife, entirely due to his aggressive, insecure insistence that a woman's place was strictly in the home, serving her husband. However, my former boss, Alistair Vance, a man who had highly valued my rare, unparalleled financial talent, was absolutely reluctant to see my brilliant mind leave the industry entirely. When Mr. Vance left Wall Street to start his own massive, global consulting and investment firm in London, he quietly hired me to continue working for him in absolute, highly paid secrecy. I became his lead ghost analyst. All of my complex, high-level corporate work was done from the shadows of my suburban home. During the day, while Grayson was at his office pretending to be a master of the universe, or late at night after the entire family was fast asleep, I would sit at my encrypted computer. I spent hours translating foreign economic intelligence, analyzing volatile global market data, and writing predictive reports that moved millions of dollars across borders. My massive executive-level compensation was quietly wired every single month to a heavily fortified personal offshore account in the Cayman Islands, an account that Grayson, in his infinite arrogance, knew absolutely nothing about. A woman with no skills. Whose money do you think you're living on? Every single time Grayson or Eleanor had hurled those venomous, degrading words at me over the dining room table, I would laugh inwardly. The secretive, untaxed income one generated in a single quarter far exceeded Grayson's entire, pathetic annual salary. He contacted me via secure line, Mr. Stanley said, tapping a few keys on his glowing iPad. He told me you had, finally, permanently left that wretched, toxic house. You made the absolute right decision, Era. Mr. Vance has always said that keeping a brilliant, world-class analytical mind like yours locked away in such a small, suffocating domestic prison was a tragic loss for the global economy. Mr. Stanley looked at me, his expression turning deeply serious and intensely professional. Madam Era, from this day forward, you will be officially working as a senior lead analyst at our London global headquarters. We expect you to fully, publicly utilize your immense talents. Your executive desk and your team are already prepared for you. I let out a long, shuddering, incredibly deep breath. My frozen body slowly began to thaw from the luxurious warmth of the car, and an overwhelming, intoxicating sense of total relief washed over my soul. Lily, wrapped safely in Mr. Stanley's heavy cashmere coat, had fallen back into a peaceful, deep sleep against my side. "Thank you, Richard. But I truly never imagined you would come out in the rain to pick me up yourself," I said, offering a genuine smile. "We absolutely could not risk losing an asset as incredibly valuable as you to a bout of pneumonia," he chuckled warmly. "And besides," he paused, his eyes narrowing slightly, and turned the screen of his glowing tablet to face me. Displayed on the high-resolution screen was the corporate logo of the specific American Trading Corporation where Grayson worked, alongside massive, dense columns of recent, highly classified transaction data. "There is another, highly sensitive task requested directly by Mr. Vance," Mr. Stanley said, his voice dropping into a lethal, conspiratorial whisper. "A thorough forensic financial investigation into your ex-husband, Grayson Miller, and the specific investment portfolios he is currently managing." "Grayson's projects?" I asked, my analytical brain instantly snapping to attention. "Indeed. For some time now, our compliance algorithms have noticed incredibly suspicious, erratic financial flows related to a massive overseas investment deal he is personally handling for our fund. We were already conducting our own internal shadow investigation. It seems your ex-husband is involved in some very, very risky illicit business." I stared at the tablet screen, my eyes scanning the routing numbers, a terrifying chill running rapidly down my spine. Grayson was a man completely driven by toxic vanity, ego, and pride. I knew he was deeply frustrated that his corporate career was lagging behind his younger peers. Recently, I had vaguely wondered exactly where he was getting the disposable liquid cash to take a young mistress like Chloe to five-star restaurants and buy her authentic designer handbags on a mid-tier manager's salary. "Mr. Stanley, are you suggesting that Grayson is actively using stolen company funds?" "We cannot say for absolute certain just yet," Mr. Stanley replied, his eyes dark with corporate fury. "But we strongly suspect massive, coordinated embezzlement, and the routing methods he is using are quite amateurish, yet highly malicious. If this comes to light during an official audit, he won't just be fired, Era. He will be arrested by federal authorities and face decades in federal prison for wire fraud." Arrested, federal prison. The heavy, devastating words hung thickly in the warm air of the luxury sedan. And then, Mr. Stanley smoothly dropped another, even more catastrophic bombshell into my lap. "And one more thing, Era. The young woman he intends to marry. Chloe." I looked up sharply. "What about her?" "We had our private intelligence firm run a thorough, deep-dive background check on her as well," Mr. Stanley said, leaning back into his leather seat. "A person who pushed one of our top analysts to such an extreme life change deserved a very thorough vetting. And we found something incredibly interesting." Mr. Stanley gave a cold, shark-like smile that sent shivers down my arms. "That woman's highly publicized pregnancy. Do you really, honestly think it is your ex-husband's child?" I gasped audibly, the uneasy, gnawing feeling I had experienced on the airplane. Chloe's unnaturally triumphant, arrogant attitude. The timeline of it all. "What do you mean, Richard?" "It appears she has been intimately involved with multiple, highly questionable men over the last year, besides your ex-husband. One of them is a very senior, incredibly wealthy executive connected to a rival firm. Another is a known associate of a shell company syndicate." I stared at him in utter disbelief. "So the baby she intentionally, maliciously chose your husband to frame as the father," Mr. Stanley explained quietly. "Probably because, with his massive ego and his desperation to prove his manhood to his mother, he was the absolute easiest target to deceive. Her ultimate plan is to squeeze him for a massive, multi-million-dollar financial settlement once they are married. Or rather, she plans to steal all the marital assets she assumes he is currently stealing from you." I felt physically dizzy, the sheer, incredible magnitude of the betrayal washing over me. Grayson had been utterly, completely deceived by a gold-digging con artist who was carrying another man's child. He had violently destroyed our family, kicked his own daughter to the curb, maliciously canceled my credit cards to leave me starving in the rain, and was currently risking decades in federal prison by embezzling from his own company to buy this woman's affection. What an unbelievably pathetic, arrogant, foolish man. "I made a tactical proposal to your employer this morning," Mr. Stanley said, closing the cover of his tablet with a sharp snap and looking at me directly with fierce, unwavering support. "We will provide our absolute, unlimited corporate backing for the financial and legal sanctions against Grayson Miller." He reached out and gently patted my shoulder. "Madam Era, you have endured grossly unfair treatment, and you have silently, loyally served those toxic people for far too long. You do not have to tolerate it for a single second anymore. We will provide you with the perfect, insurmountable platform for your total counterattack." The luxury car slowed and pulled to a smooth stop in front of a breathtaking, historic, multi-story brick townhouse in one of London's most affluent, heavily guarded residential districts. "This will be your private estate from now on, for you and your beautiful daughter," Mr. Stanley announced proudly. "The security detail is top-notch, the perimeter is secure, and absolutely everything you could possibly need for a life of luxury has already been fully arranged inside. Please go inside and get some well-deserved rest tonight." As the professional driver opened the heavy door and held a massive umbrella to shield us from the lingering mist, I carefully carried the sleeping Lily out of the car. The rain had completely stopped, and a brilliant, silver moon was now clearly visible through a dramatic break in the dark London clouds. I looked up at the sky. Back in America, Grayson, Eleanor, Belle, and Chloe were probably popping cheap champagne, toasting their grand victory, entirely convinced they had successfully driven me out into the gutter. They were probably praying that I was currently starving, shivering, and miserable in a foreign land. But they were making a massive, apocalyptic mistake. They didn't know that I now possessed the most powerful financial weapons, the most devastating secrets, and the most untouchable corporate allies on the entire planet. "Now, let's begin preparing the execution," I murmured in a quiet, incredibly firm voice, staring at the moon. My face, illuminated brightly by the moonlight, was no longer crying. The grieving, submissive housewife was dead. The top-tier analyst was finally, permanently awake, while I was greeting a quiet, rain-washed dawn in London. Safe inside my new luxury townhouse, my ex-husband's family in America was aggressively reveling in their perceived victory. Ah! With that gloomy, depressing woman finally gone, this house feels so much brighter and more spacious. Eleanor chirped gleefully, slicing an imported gourmet melon in the massive kitchen. This was the exact kitchen I had meticulously polished, organized, and maintained every single day for 15 years. But now, lounging lazily on the expensive living room sofa, was Chloe, dressed in a flashy, skin-tight designer maternity dress. "It's so true, Eleanor. Era was always so horribly depressing. Just being in the same room as her was completely suffocating." Chloe cooed in her sickly sweet, high-pitched voice, rubbing her swollen belly. Grayson nodded in deep satisfaction, adjusting the cuffs of his expensive dress shirt. Exactly. No skills, no ambition, yet she was so full of ridiculous pride. She's probably stranded on the freezing streets of London right now. I canceled all her credit cards while she was in the air, and I cleaned out the joint account completely. I bet you anything she'll come crying to me on the phone by tomorrow morning, begging for a plane ticket. Grayson let out a crude, arrogant laugh, walking over and pulling Chloe closer. A massive, diamond-encrusted luxury watch, a timepiece I had never seen before, easily worth tens of thousands of dollars, glinted brightly on his wrist. "Not that I'll help her, of course," Grayson sneered. "She made her bed." Chloe pouted, tracing the lapel of his shirt. "Grayson, honey, after the baby is born, I want to move into a much bigger place, like a luxury penthouse apartment downtown. This suburban house is just so ordinary." Grayson smiled, puffing out his chest. You got it, babe. My promotion to senior vice president is just around the corner, and I've got plenty of liquid cash rolling in. His face was full of blinding confidence, showing absolutely no hint of panic, despite the fact that he was actively, criminally embezzling millions from his own company to fund this fantasy. They had absolutely no idea that a giant, apocalyptic pitfall was violently opening right beneath their feet. The next morning, Grayson and Eleanor took Chloe to a renowned, ultra-high-end obstetrics clinic in Chicago's wealthy Gold Coast district to check on the baby. Well, if you're going to give birth to the official Miller family heir, it has to be at a prestigious, five-star hospital like this, Eleanor announced loudly, literally looking down her nose at the other expecting mothers in the waiting room. Grayson, trying desperately to act the part of a massive corporate titan, sat with his legs crossed, flipping casually through a financial magazine. Chloe Miller? The doctor will see you now, a nurse called out. The three of them entered the plush examination room together. Hello. How are we feeling today? Let's take a nice, clear look at the baby with the ultrasound, the veteran doctor said with a gentle, professional smile, helping Chloe onto the examination bed and adjusting her dress. Cold gel was applied to her belly, and a high-resolution, black and white image immediately appeared on the large flat-screen monitor mounted on the wall. Look, Eleanor. Grayson. He's moving. Chloe pointed at the screen, her voice full of triumphant pride. Wow, so that's my son, Grayson beamed, stepping closer to the screen. Oh, what a healthy, strong little boy. He looks just like Grayson already, Eleanor exclaimed, clapping her hands together. It was at that exact, joyous moment that the doctor, who had been staring incredibly intently at the digital measurements on the monitor, deeply frowned. The doctor tilted his head, narrowing his eyes, comparing the size of the image on the screen with the intake information written in Chloe's digital chart. The cheerful atmosphere in the room suddenly grew incredibly tense. Doctor, is something wrong? Grayson asked, his smile faltering anxiously. The doctor turned to them, replying in a highly perplexed, careful tone. No. The baby is developing very well. It's just, Miss Chloe, you stated on your intake forms that you are currently at 12 weeks gestation, meaning you are entering your third month. Yes, that's right, Chloe said, her voice suddenly sounding a pitch too high. Well, the cranial and femur measurements of the fetus definitively contradict that, the doctor stated plainly. Based on the ultrasound findings, you are absolutely at 20 weeks. You are a full 5 months pregnant. Grayson and Eleanor looked at each other in total, paralyzing confusion. Doctor, are you absolutely sure? Grayson stammered. There must be a mistake with the machine. Chloe and I only started dating 3 months ago. She should only be 3 months pregnant. Eleanor interjected sharply, glaring at the doctor. The doctor shook his head firmly, his professional demeanor hardening. There is no mistake with the machine, ma'am. It is definitively 5 months. Furthermore, the doctor added, tapping his keyboard and looking at the encrypted, shared medical database in her chart. Miss Chloe, you visited a partner clinic in this network once before, exactly 2 months ago. At that time, you were accompanied by a much older, heavy-set gentleman. The signed intake form states that he was your husband. A deadly, silent crack ran violently through the room. What? The color completely drained from Grayson's arrogant face, leaving him a sickening shade of gray. Eleanor stood there, her designer handbag slipping from her shoulder, her mouth agape in absolute horror. Chloe, what is the meaning of this? 5 months? And who on earth is this older man? Eleanor's shrill voice trembled violently. On the bed, Chloe's face had gone deathly, ghostly pale. Her perfectly glossed lips were trembling uncontrollably. No, that's not right. The doctor is mistaken. It's a glitch in the system. She shrieked in a blind panic, trying to sit up. At that exact, explosive moment, Grayson's cell phone rang in his pocket. The shrill, piercing ringtone shattered the suffocating tension in the room. Dazed, Grayson looked at the screen. It was a call from his boss, the head of the sales department. Yes. Miller speaking. Grayson answered the phone, his voice shaking. He was instantly met with his boss's furious, deafening roar blasting through the speaker. Miller, get your ass back to the corporate office right now. The internal audit department is currently tearing apart the books for every single one of your past overseas projects. What the hell is going on? Grayson's knees buckled. The audit department, he whispered. The expensive smartphone slipped from his sweaty, trembling hand, clattering loudly onto the hard linoleum floor of the clinic. A fake, fabricated pregnancy. The discovery of an older patron. The sudden, terrifying dawn of a corporate audit. The flimsy, arrogant castle Grayson had built for himself was now violently coming crashing down with a deafening, apocalyptic roar. The next morning, the London sky was a clear, brilliant, piercing blue, a stark contrast to the previous night's cold, depressing rain. In the incredibly spacious living room of my new townhouse, complete with a crackling, warm fireplace, I gently placed another thick, luxury blanket over Lily, who was still fast asleep on the plush sofa. "I'll be back soon, my sweet girl," I whispered, kissing her forehead. I stepped outside into the crisp morning air and slid into the back of the armored, executive car Mr. Stanley had sent for me. We drove swiftly to a massive, glass-encased skyscraper in the absolute heart of the City of London, the global financial center of the world. I was escorted to the top floor. Behind a heavy, soundproof mahogany door, an older, distinguished gentleman was waiting for me behind a massive glass desk. "Thank you so much for coming, Era. I am incredibly sorry to trouble you after such a long, harrowing journey," he said, standing up to greet me. "Mr. Vance. It's been a very long time." I smiled genuinely. He was Alistair Vance, the brilliant man who had secretly employed me as his lead ghost analyst for 15 years. He was the founder and head of a massive, multi-billion-dollar global investment fund. And, most crucially, he was the absolute majority shareholder in the American trading corporation where Grayson worked. He was a man of immense, terrifying global power. No, here in this building, I should address you by your proper, earned title. The absolute top analyst our firm is so incredibly proud of. "Madam Era," Mr. Vance said with a warm, respectful bow. "Your foolish ex-husband actually called you a woman with no skills, didn't he? I simply cannot believe a man would treat one of the world's finest financial minds like a domestic housekeeper. What an astronomically foolish, blind man. Mr. Vance, thank you so much for protecting my secret all these years and for your generous, life-saving support last night," I said, bowing my head deeply in gratitude. Vance's expression instantly turned serious and razor-sharp as he slid a high-tech, glowing tablet across the glass desk toward me. "The initial, encrypted report you sent me before you left American airspace, the one detailing your suspicions about your ex-husband's gross financial misconduct, was flawless," Vance explained. I immediately applied direct, overwhelming pressure to the audit department in the U.S. and initiated a top-secret, hostile internal investigation. But we hit a wall. Was there a problem tracing the funds? I asked, looking at the complex data on the screen. Yes, it is abundantly clear that Grayson Miller has been aggressively embezzling massive amounts of company funds. But the money, a staggering sum of over $5 million, has been routed through an incredibly complex, labyrinthine network of offshore shell companies. We cannot trace its final, ultimate destination. The American audit team is completely stumped. Vance looked me straight in the eye, his gaze burning with total trust. "Era, I need you to use your unparalleled expertise to unravel this financial maze right now. I want you to deliver the final, lethal blow that brings him down permanently." I silently took the tablet. The screen was filled with a dizzying, chaotic array of routing numbers, dummy corporation names, and complex wire transaction records. To the average person or even a standard corporate accountant, it would look like absolute, unsolvable gibberish. But to my highly trained eyes, the hidden, malicious pattern was crystal clear. My fingers began to fly aggressively across the attached keyboard. This was entirely different from the days of hiding in a dark, cramped corner of my suburban house to work secretly on my laptop. Here, in a glass tower overlooking London, with absolutely no one to hide from, my true, lethal talent was violently reawakening. 10 minutes later, I stopped typing. I looked up, my eyes ice cold. Found it. Mr. Stanley and Mr. Vance instantly leaned in over the desk. These multiple shell companies appear completely unrelated at first glance, I explained, tracing the data flows with my finger. But they all ultimately, systematically funnel into a single, heavily fortified private account in the Bahamas. And the name of the director of the primary holding company managing that specific account, I pointed to the highlighted name on the screen. "Oh my God," Mr. Stanley whispered, his eyes widening in profound shock. "Era, this name." Vance pushed his glasses up his nose. "Is it possible?" "Yes," I confirmed, my voice dripping with cold, hard, absolute certainty. "It's the exact same name Mr. Stanley uncovered yesterday in his background check on Chloe, the older man who accompanied her to the obstetrics clinic, her real patron and partner." I laid out the cold, hard, devastating facts for the billionaires in the room. Grayson was aggressively embezzling company funds and channeling them directly into this man's offshore company under the absolute guise of a high-yield international investment. Chloe and this older man were in on the con together from the very start. They specifically targeted Grayson to defraud him. I let out a dark, humorless laugh. So, Grayson was completely tricked into believing he was the father of his mistress's child, all while being used as a gullible, arrogant pawn to funnel away millions of his company's money straight into her real boyfriend's pocket. A brilliant, terrifying connection of the dots. Vance sighed in deep admiration. Mr. Stanley actually applauded quietly in the quiet room. "Magnificent. You truly are a genius, Madame Era." "All right," Vance commanded, pressing a button on his desk console. "Let's send this perfect, damning report to the audit department in the U.S. immediately. Execute the order." Meanwhile, back in a bleak, windowless, heavily guarded conference room at the American Trading Corporation in Chicago, Grayson was surrounded by several aggressive, unsmiling corporate auditors. Sweat was violently beading on his forehead, soaking his collar. "Give me a break. There is absolutely no way I would ever embezzle money." Grayson slammed his fist onto the table, desperately trying to talk his way out of the tightening noose. "I am the rising star of this company. This is all a massive accounting mistake. I am an elite. I just got rid of that gloomy, depressing wife of mine and won a beautiful young woman. I am one of the chosen ones. This cannot be happening. It was my subordinate's mistake. I didn't know anything about the routing." As Grayson pathetically tried to shift the blame to his lower-level employees, the head of the audit department just stared at him with a cold, disgusted gaze. Just then, a sharp notification pinged on the head auditor's secure laptop. He opened the encrypted email. The look in his eyes changed instantly from suspicion to absolute, lethal certainty. "Miller," the auditor said quietly. "What is it? I told you I'm entirely innocent." Grayson pleaded, his voice cracking. "We just received a priority file directly from our majority shareholder in London. It contains absolute, irrefutable, complete proof of your misconduct." "What?" The auditor slammed a thick, freshly printed stack of papers face down in front of Grayson. It was a perfectly illustrated, ruthlessly detailed diagram showing the exact, undeniable flow of funds to the shell companies and the cruel, humiliating truth that every single cent of it had ended up with Chloe's older patron. "It seems you were completely, utterly duped by the young woman you were lavishing our company's money on, Miller," the auditor sneered, dripping with contempt. You embezzled millions of dollars from this corporation and handed it all directly to a professional con artist. There is absolutely no talking your way out of this now. No, that's impossible. Chloe loves me. That baby is mine. Grayson screamed, his eyes bloodshot, frantically flipping through the devastating report. Who the hell created this garbage report? The head auditor scoffed loudly. Garbage? This is a flawless, world-class forensic report prepared by a legendary top analyst employed directly by our majority shareholder. But I have to admit, even I was shocked by the analyst's name. The auditor leaned over and tapped a thick finger on the author's byline at the very bottom of the report. It's the exact same name as your ex-wife, Miller. Grayson's frantic eyes locked onto the black text. Lead forensic analyst, Era Vance. Era. Grayson whispered. The blood drained from his face. No, it can't be. A shock, as if he had been violently hit over the head with a sledgehammer, coursed through his entire nervous system. A desperate, animalistic moan escaped Grayson's lips. The quiet, submissive woman he had looked down on, trampled upon, and thrown away into the rain just hours ago was now the terrifying, omnipotent force holding the Reaper's scythe directly to his neck. Grayson's true, inescapable hell was just beginning. No, Era is a clumsy, useless housewife, a top analyst. It's impossible. She doesn't know anything about finance. Grayson's desperate, hysterical screams echoed through the sterile conference room. The woman you arrogantly dismissed as having absolutely no skills, the head auditor said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper, has been a top-tier, highly paid ghost analyst, secretly employed for the past 15 years by our majority shareholder, the London Investment Fund. And this entire catastrophic investigation into you was conducted under the direct, personal orders of the shareholder, by her. The auditor's cold words violently pierced Grayson's heart like daggers. No, that can't be. She was just a housewife living off my money, Grayson babbled, staring blankly at the wall, his mind completely shattering. And that just a housewife is now the single most critical asset to the billionaire who controls the fate of this entire corporation. The auditor shook his head in utter, profound disbelief at Grayson's stupidity. Miller, you really stepped on a nuclear landmine, didn't you? We have all the evidence. We've already contacted federal authorities. The police are waiting in the lobby. There is no escape. Wait, please. It's not my fault. I was tricked by that woman. By Chloe. I'm the real victim here. Grayson threw himself from his chair, groveling and collapsing to his knees on the cold, hard tile floor, weeping pathetic tears. But not a single auditor in the room showed him a microscopic shred of sympathy. A victim, the auditor scoffed. After embezzling $5 million from us to buy designer bags for a con artist? Save your pathetic excuses for the feds. At the exact same time, back in the upscale obstetrics clinic, another brutal version of hell was rapidly unfolding. I'm telling you, you're mistaken. I am 3 months pregnant. 5 months is physically impossible. Chloe shrieked from the examination bed, her face ashen gray as she desperately tried to maintain her rapidly crumbling lie. But the ultrasound measurements clearly show, the bewildered doctor began. But Eleanor was already trembling with explosive, blinding rage. Chloe, what is going on here? Eleanor's shrill voice filled the room. The usually prim, snobbish woman was now a terrifying picture of fury. 5 months. Does that mean you were heavily pregnant before you even started dating my son? And who the hell was that older man who came here with you 2 months ago? Eleanor, that's not true. Please believe me. This is Grayson's baby. Chloe cried, backing away on the bed. Don't you dare lie to me. Doctors don't lie. You got knocked up by another man and tried to trick my son into paying for it, didn't you? Eleanor lunged violently at Chloe, grabbing a fistful of her hair extensions. Ow! Stop it! Let go of me, you crazy old hag! I'll tell Grayson. He loves me and this baby. And where is your precious Grayson now? Eleanor screamed. He got called away by his company and isn't even answering his phone. Just then, the door to the examination room violently burst open. It was Grayson's sister, Belle, panting heavily for breath, her designer luggage forgotten. Mom, it's terrible. Belle, weren't you supposed to be on a flight to Hawaii? This is no time for a vacation. Eleanor snapped, still holding Chloe's hair. Dad just called in a panic. Belle screamed, tears streaming down her face. Grayson has been arrested by the police, handcuffed and dragged out of his building for embezzling company money. Arrested? Eleanor and Chloe's voices overlapped perfectly in absolute shock. He apparently stole millions of dollars from his trading corporation and funneled it to some offshore shell company. And the money? Eleanor asked, dropping Chloe's hair. Belle turned a venomous, lethal glare onto Chloe. It all ended up in the bank account of your patron, Chloe. Eleanor stared blankly, utterly unable to process the horrific information. It means this woman was a professional con artist from the very start. She was only after our company's money, and the baby in her stomach is probably that older patron's bastard child. At Belle's devastating words, the very last bit of color drained from Chloe's face. The plan had been so perfect. Grayson, with his incredibly fragile pride, his bottomless vanity and his selfishness, had been the perfect gullible mark. Get him to kick out his boring wife, marry the young mistress, and bleed his corporate accounts dry. How? How could they find out? Chloe stammered, her lips trembling violently. It was completely hidden. Don't be stupid. Belle shoved her smartphone violently in front of Eleanor and Chloe's faces. The person who exposed all of this to the feds was the top analyst for my brother's company's majority shareholder. On the glowing screen was a massive, breaking financial news headline from a major global outlet. Massive London investment fund appoints new senior analyst. Uncovers multi-million-dollar embezzlement case in top-secret investigation. Right below the bold headline was a high-resolution, professional photograph of a breathtakingly beautiful woman standing confidently against the backdrop of the London skyline, wearing a tailored, $1,000 navy suit. This can't be real, Eleanor whispered, her knees giving out, collapsing onto the clinic floor. The useless, dull, incompetent wife she had treated like a slave for a decade was a world-class top analyst at a global financial firm. The powerful, commanding woman in the photo was, without a single doubt, the woman they had thrown out of their house into the rain just yesterday. But this wasn't the broken era in a worn-out, stained apron. This was a sophisticated, terrifyingly intelligent woman exuding absolute grace and lethal power. Era! She took all our money! Chloe stared at the phone, her face contorting in total despair. They finally, truly understood. The quiet little pebble they had been arrogantly trampling underfoot for 15 years was actually a nuclear bomb powerful enough to obliterate their entire bloodline. And the person who had happily pressed the detonation button was none other than themselves. Chloe fled the clinic in a blind panic, running desperately through the pouring Chicago rain, her expensive heels clicking on the pavement, completely heedless of the mud ruining her maternity dress. How could this happen? They weren't supposed to find out. She repeatedly, frantically tried calling her patron, Vincent Vinrusso, but the calls went straight to a disconnected voicemail. Russo was a highly dangerous career con artist who operated multiple illegal shell companies. Chloe had approached Grayson under Russo's direct orders, faking the paternity of the pregnancy to execute their master plan to embezzle from the trading corporation. Once that gloomy wife was kicked to the curb, millions of dollars would be theirs to flee to the Caribbean with. Chloe finally reached Russo's luxury, high-rise apartment downtown. With a trembling hand, She jammed her emergency key into the lock and stumbled inside, only to find an unbelievable, chaotic scene. Damn it! Why? Why the hell are all my offshore accounts frozen? Papers, ledgers, and hard drives were strewn everywhere across the expensive rugs. Russo, a heavy-set, balding older man, was staring at his multiple computer monitors with bloodshot eyes, furiously pounding the keyboard as if trying to physically destroy it. "Vinny, help me. Grayson was arrested. They know everything." Chloe screamed, "Shut up, you stupid jinx." A powerful, vicious backhand slap from Russo sent Chloe flying backward, crashing onto the hardwood floor. Staring down at her, Russo's face was a horrifying mask of pure, murderous rage. "It's all your fault. Because you couldn't handle that arrogant, idiot Grayson Miller properly. My entire global operation is completely finished. Some top-tier analyst from a massive British fund hacked my network and exposed every last, miserable cent of my illegal transfers to the authorities. The feds and the IRS are already on their way up the elevator. All my assets are gone. My life is over." "No. Then what about me? What about our baby? It's your child." Chloe cried hysterically, trying to grab onto his pant leg. Russo violently kicked her away as if she were diseased filth. "My child? Don't make me laugh, you idiot. I had a vasectomy 10 years ago. You think you can pin some random bastard you conceived fooling around at a club on me?" Chloe felt as if she'd been struck by lightning. Her entire world stopped spinning. "When you told me you were pregnant, I just saw it as the absolute perfect excuse to squeeze more money out of Grayson's pathetic vanity," Russo spat, throwing clothes into a duffel bag. "You were nothing but a convenient collection machine. Now you're totally useless. Get the hell out of my apartment before I throw you off the balcony." Russo grabbed his duffel bag, stuffed it with whatever loose cash and untraceable jewelry was left, and fled out the service door, leaving a stunned, bleeding Chloe behind. All that remained was Chloe, completely alone, clutching her stomach on the cold, hardwood floor, trembling in a despair so profound she couldn't even make a sound as the distant wail of police sirens approached the building. At the same time, in a dim, freezing interrogation room at a downtown police precinct, Grayson sat in heavy steel handcuffs, staring blankly at the metal table. A veteran detective with graying hair sat across from him, flipping casually through a thick, devastating file provided by the London firm. "Grayson Miller, the $5 million you embezzled were all perfectly, undeniably traced to the offshore accounts of a career con artist named Vincent Russo. The woman you were so deeply infatuated with, Chloe, was just his pathetic accomplice, acting strictly on his orders to drain you dry." The detective's cold, factual words stabbed violently at Grayson's heart. "No, that's a lie. Chloe loves me. She's pregnant with my child. I have a son. Are you still spouting that delusional nonsense?" The detective let out a heavy sigh of sheer exasperation and slapped a medical document onto the table. "Chloe was actively involved with multiple men. We don't even need a court-ordered DNA test to know it's not your kid, Miller. You fell for a cheap woman's lies. You completely betrayed your corporation. You got swindled out of millions and you lost everything. You're nothing but a colossal, arrogant fool." Fat, pathetic, humiliating tears rolled down Grayson's cheeks, dripping onto his handcuffs. He had deeply believed he was an elite. He had aggressively looked down on a useless woman like Era, completely convinced he deserved a younger, more beautiful, more vibrant partner. He thought he was one of the chosen ones of the universe. But the brutal truth was a harsh, agonizing slap in the face. He wasn't a master of the universe. He was just an easy, conceited, pathetic mark. "Detective, what's going to happen to me?" Grayson sobbed. "Grand larceny, aggravated wire fraud, corporate embezzlement. The total damages are in the millions, Miller. You are absolutely not going to avoid federal prison time. And of course, you'll be fired for severe cause and face a massive, crushing civil lawsuit for damages from your company's new owners. Your life as a free man is over. Grayson covered his face with his cuffed hands and sobbed loudly, his wails echoing off the concrete walls. The woman he had thrown away into the rain like common trash was now a world-class, millionaire analyst enjoying a brilliant, limitless career in London. She was a being so far above him in intellect and power that he couldn't even touch the hem of her coat. In stark contrast, he was a disgraced criminal, duped by a cheap con artist who had lost his family, his money, and his freedom, and was now sitting in a freezing cell. Ah! Grayson's scream of profound, agonizing regret echoed in the interrogation room. But the detective, far from showing a single ounce of sympathy, delivered another cold, hard fact. It's too early to be crying, Miller. You have a visitor. Someone with the worst possible news to deliver the absolute final blow to you and your family. The heavy steel door creaked open. The moment Grayson saw the face of the person standing there, he fell out of his chair in pure, unadulterated terror. The man who appeared before Grayson was his own father, Arthur, but he looked absolutely nothing like the dignified, quiet patriarch he once was. His hair was a disheveled, greasy mess, and his face was ashen gray, as if he had aged 20 years overnight. Dad, you came. Help me. I was framed. That woman, Chloe, she set me up. Grayson scrambled up, his chains rattling, trying to clutch at his father's coat. Arthur violently swatted his son's hands away and slammed a thick, brown legal envelope onto the metal table with all his remaining might. The sharp crack echoed like a gunshot through the room. Framed! Do you have absolutely any idea what you've done to us? Arthur's voice was a low, terrifying growl that seemed to come from the very depths of hell. Grayson flinched, shrinking back. The company is successfully suing you for $5 million in restitution, plus punitive damages, and because you completely manipulated me into legally co-signing those massive financial bonds for your investments last year. My retirement savings, the house, the land, absolutely everything is being seized by the federal government. No, that can't be. Grayson wept. You betrayed your company. You betrayed your family. And to top it all off, you willingly handed our entire generational fortune to some con artist's pregnant mistress, all while aggressively throwing away a real, brilliant treasure like Era. Arthur's voice cracked, sounding like he was literally coughing up blood. The news that the wife Grayson had dismissed as useless was actually a world-class, millionaire analyst who had exposed them had already reached Arthur's ears through the lawyers. Dad, I'm so sorry. I was a fool. Please, hire a defense lawyer. Do something. It's too late, Arthur said, his eyes dead and hollow. As of today, you are no longer my son. You are dead to me. Don't you ever show your face to me again. You can spend the rest of your miserable life in federal prison, cursing your own arrogance and stupidity. With that final, devastating sentence, Arthur turned his back and walked out of the interrogation room, silent tears streaming down his aged face. Left entirely behind, totally abandoned by the world, Grayson could only collapse onto the cold concrete floor, curl into a fetal position, and weep pathetically into the dirt. At the same time, an even deeper, more chaotic hell was unfolding at the Miller family's stately suburban home. This is absolutely ridiculous. Why do we have to leave? This is my house. I decorated this house. Eleanor was screeching hysterically at a group of suited, armed court officers and federal marshals standing at her front door. This is a provisional, court-ordered seizure of assets related to your son's federal embezzlement case. Ma'am, you must vacate the premises immediately. All furniture, vehicles, and high-value personal effects must be left behind to compensate the creditors. At the officer's cold, bureaucratic tone, Grayson's sister, Belle, burst into noisy, ugly tears, stomping her feet on the driveway. Mom, what are we going to do? My premium credit cards for the Hawaii trip were all declined at the airport. They're going to take my designer bags and my diamond jewelry. Be quiet, Belle. How am I supposed to know what to do? Eleanor shrieked, pulling at her own hair. Just then, a figure stumbled toward them up the driveway. It was Chloe. She was soaked to the bone from the freezing rain. Her expensive, flashy maternity dress completely caked in dark mud and city grime. Having been violently abandoned by her patron, Rousseau, and with nowhere else on earth to go, she had desperately come to the Miller house as an absolute last resort. Eleanor, please help me. I was tricked by Vinny. I have absolutely nothing left. Chloe sobbed, reaching out. The moment Eleanor saw her face, something inside the older woman's brain completely and violently snapped. How dare you show your face here? You conniving, thieving tramp! With a literal, demonic look on her face, Eleanor lunged forward like a wild animal, tackling Chloe into the mud and grabbing a massive fistful of her hair extensions, ripping them from her scalp. Ow! Stop it! Let go of me, you crazy old hag! Chloe shrieked, flailing wildly in the dirt. Who are you calling an old hag? And I bet that bastard baby isn't even my son's, is it? Because of your greed, my Grayson is a convicted criminal. Give us back our